And it's about that time. Looking at some space weather, as well as various other things. We're starting things out today looking at the X-ray imager. That's the GOES X-ray imager, if you're wondering. And we see a small uptick in X-ray activity. Note the bright region south of the equator, right near center disk, as well as a bright region forming here and here. We see a little bit of an uptick in magnetic complexity. Let's look at some more detailed images here from the SDO, the 171 angstroms view. Here's the North Pole region. There is a big plasma filament out here on the eastern limb near the equator. And there you can see those areas of magnetic complexity. This one right here. We'll look at the polarity in a minute. Probably a cycle 24 plage. And here's the colorized magnetogram. And indeed, that appears to be cycle 24 activity. As we see, the leading field here is shown green, which is the North Pole solar polar field. A little bit of magnetic complexity down here also, as well as forming over in this region. Those are the areas to look at throughout the day. And there's that small uptick in the X-ray flux, as noted by the GOES 14 and 15. Next, we'll check out the real-time solar wind, which remains slightly elevated here at 459, although it's been calming down over the past 24 hours. It reached all the way up to about 650 kilometers per second, solar wind density 2.66 protons per cubic centimeter. And there's the data from ACE, looking corroborative. Here's the Geospace Magnetosphere movie. And there's an interesting article to talk about here, as there will be some sounding rockets checking out the turbulence at the poles. Anyway, we see extremely offset plasma here on the equatorial plane view. You notice how offset that is? It's kind of odd. And let's move on to the ground magnetic perturbations. And there are significant ground perturbations. We see most of the activity in terms of magnetohydrodynamic density coming in the magnetotail, so the dark side of the Earth, the non-sun facing side of the Earth. And looking at the geospace magnetic ground perturbations, we see major perturbations over the net North Pole. And it looks to me, and it's been looking like this for a while, folks. I haven't said anything about it until today, but it looks like there are two poles forming in the South Pole also. I mean, there's clearly greater magnetic intensity here south of South America than there is south of Africa, and there's more out here in the southern Indian Ocean as well. So it's not a good sign to see two North Poles and two South Poles, as that could be part of an accelerating geomagnetic migration. I'll let this play through a third time as I babble about it. And notice that we see significant magnetic perturbations over the Canadian North Pole, as well as over the Siberian North Pole, as well as the net, which is around Svalbard, here east of Greenland. And notice the two different sections of the South Pole here, showing up, again, south of the Indian Ocean and south of South America. And here's the view from the poles, just to let things sink in a little bit. We also do see some magnetic anomalies in the South Pacific, as we've been seeing for several days. I would note the way that these polar views look like spirals, and that is because of the induction of current via a Birkeland current traveling through the solar system. I'll let this play through a second time. And we see some magnetic spill out there, mainly out of the South Pole, but a little bit coming out of the North Pole also. And we're going to talk about those sounding rockets in just a moment. Pardon the lateness for the video, and thanks everybody who tuned into the premiere to watch live with us. And so let's talk about these sounding rockets here. looking at a GIF animation that we pulled from the article here. And this is a GIF animation, artist's rendition of the solar wind passing around and into the Earth's magnetosphere. And you can see these tornado-like structures here coming out of the poles. This is what they're looking to study here, as the turbulence in both magnetohydrodynamic turbulence as well as atmospheric turbulence, in other words, matter as well as electromagnetics, electron flux, etc., are affecting the transmission of GPS signals and satellite communications in between these areas. And so in an effort to greater understand that, there are some sounding rockets going to be going up. We've linked to this article from SciTech Daily below the video. It's a step in the right direction, understanding the magnetohydrodynamics, and at least they're starting to understand what happens at the poles. And we're not going to say Z fields yet. But in any case, shout out to Gareth from See the Pattern, one of our favorite YouTube channels. Let's get back to solar data. Talking about the 10.7 centimeter radial flux, a fairly proportional aspect of solar activity, proportional to sunspot number, holding steady at 70 solar flux units. And here's the data from solon.info. And you can see we've kind of risen above the 70 line here, or above the 69 line, I should say. We did get as low as 64 here a little while ago, and that looks like the legit solar minimum there to me. And without conjecturing further, let's move on to more data. The GOES magnetometer is looking a little choppy, as a heliospheric current sheet polarity crossing has just occurred. And here's the Gong2 data to back up what I've just said. Now this is an hour and 4 minutes old, so it's pretty new data here. And you can see the Earth is right just on the South Pole oriented portion here, shown in red. And here's the last frame to show what I'm talking about. Now keep in mind, folks, this can change suddenly and with absolutely no warning. But with the current state of affairs, we don't really expect to see any changes in this anytime soon. Although, if a sunspot suddenly forms south of the equator, that could snap us back to the North Pole-oriented portion, and I won't say anything else. KP index is at 2, leveling down and down since yesterday, first thing in the morning. We're going to skip cosmic rays today, but if you'd like to go monitor them yourself, we do link to that page there so you can monitor all the sites. We usually look at Athens and Oulu and Mexico City and Moscow. Here's a GOES electron flux, which did rise up a little bit higher as I forecasted yesterday. Don't believe me? Watch yesterday's video. And the relativistic electrons have also risen, although not precipitously. Here is the ionosphere map, and we are seeing some charge anomalies over the South Pacific once again. Not quite as extreme as they were a couple of days ago. Also some discharge anomalies there in the northern hemisphere. No big deal. There's the latest image. That one coming in at 10:30 UT. Again, pardon the lateness, folks. And no major earthquakes in the past 24 hours. Let's go over everything over a 4 magnitude, starting out with this 4.3 at extreme depth. Southwest of Kamchatka. This 4.3 magnitude coming in at 465 kilometers. That's a deep quake. 4.7 at Papua New Guinea's next. That one coming in at 11:05. Current time is 5:36 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm located in the Lehigh Valley, thanks to our new viewers, subscribers, patrons, etc. Next on the list is a 4.3 at Fiji. That one coming in at 14:55 UT yesterday. Next is a 4.6 at Indonesia, followed by a 4.6 at Japan. That one at 16:02 UT. Here's one near Easter Island. It looks like it's actually quite a bit northwest of Easter Island there. Easter Island, a property of Chile, one of the weirder places in the world. 4.7 magnitude quake. Probably not felt on Easter Island. I think they have like 200 people living there. Crazy place. It's a crazy place, folks, and it's very, very desolate. Here's a 5.0 at Chile. That one at extreme depth. I still wouldn't be surprised to see a 7+ magnitude quake kick off in western South America. Here's a 4.6 in the Philippines. That one is at over 100 kilometers depth. And next on the list, this one coming in about 40 minutes later at Russia. Farther south and farther west of the previous one. I think that's actually the largest quake of the past 24, that 5.2 at Russia coming in at 12 after midnight. Next we see another very deep quake at Fiji, 582 kilometers and a 4.3 magnitude. Next is a 4.5 off the coast of Central America, near the Central America-South America juncture. There is a very tight plate boundary in that region, by the way. And quakes have updated. We see a 4.7 at Papua New Guinea, a 5.3 at Vanuatu. I think that's actually the largest of the past 24. That one's also at depth. Heads up Oceania for a larger quake at the surface, although we don't see significant coronal hole activity, and for that, we thank you. Please leave a comment if you have a message for the sun. Perhaps we'll read it in tomorrow's video, or maybe even later today. Here's a 4.6 at Russia. That one coming in at 3:37, about 7 hours before we created this video. Here's a 4.7 at Fiji, another deep quake, this one at 339.2 kilometers. Next, this one coming in at 6:38 UT, a 4.6 in Indonesia, followed by a 4.4 in Indonesia. That one coming in just a couple of hours ago. Here are the pressure maps on windy.com. By the way, windy.com has a fantastic mobile app. It's free. It's full of data. And we'll just let that advance for 24 hours before we move on. And right about there is where things should be paused. There's about 24 hours from now. Looks like I'm going to have a low pressure system right above my head. And check out this low in the northern Pacific. It's a little funky looking. And let's move on. Please leave a comment if you're an earthquake forecaster. Volcano rundown includes Mount Aso, which is producing a 6,000-foot ash plume. Don't fly over that on your homemade ultralight aircraft. Sakurajima erupted, 8,000-foot plume there. Mount Ibu exploding, 7,000-foot plume there. Sanjiang Api exploding, 8,000-foot plume there. Tukono exploding, 7,000-foot plume there. Popocatépetl, volcanic ash detected in satellite imagery. Please leave a comment if you're viewing the videos from Mexico or perhaps Mexico City. If you're in view of the volcano, put up a comment on your Instagram. Put up a photo on your Instagram, rather, and leave a comment. We'll feature it on the channel. Nevados de Ruiz, volcanic ash detected in satellite imagery. Sangay, 19,000-foot ash plume there as it explodes. Revenador exploding also, 15,000-foot plume there. Sabancaya, continuous emissions, and Nevados de Chilean, volcanic ash not identifiable in satellite data. Here's where stuff is in the solar system. There's where things will be in 1 week. Have you done any Christmas shopping yet? Please leave a comment. Here's where stuff is above my head. Check out in-the-sky.org's sky map if you want to make your own. There's all kinds of different interesting data there. Figure out where things are. And we're going to be talking about some stuff in a moment. But first, we're going to talk about robotized paper. 40 proofs against the gaseous plasma model of the sun. Let me read a quote. Arthur Eddington believed that stellar collapse could be prevented by radiation pressure. Photons could transfer their momentum to stellar particles and thereby support structure. These ideas depend on the existence of radiation within objects, a proposal which is counter to all laboratory understanding of heat transfer. Conduction and convection are responsible for the transfer of energy within objects. It is only if one wishes to view the sun as an assembly of separate objects that radiation can be invoked. We've left links to it. It's 40 lines of evidence for condensed matter the sun on trial, liquid metallic hydrogen as a solar building block. And let me just make one other note. Magnetic fields can't be generated by gases. They need to be generated by condensed matter. Anyway, read the paper. Now let's talk about the local stars. Yes, we're doing every day here for a while. I'm not sure how long or if we'll get to every one of them. But here's a Wikipedia article about the 52 stellar systems most local to the local yellow dwarf. Today we're going to be talking about Epsilon Eridani. It is an interesting star. And here's where it's located in the stellar neighborhood. It is close enough to the stellar equator that it's visible from most of the planet, Epsilon Eridani. And let's talk about some facts about it. But first, let's talk about how it's been featured in all kinds of science fiction, even in one of Asimov's books. I believe it's Foundation something or other. I don't know. I read one of the Foundation series myself and found it terribly boring. Perhaps I'd find it more interesting now, but I doubt it. Anyway, this particular star just happens to be all over pop culture, and there are reasons for it. Let's get into it. Now, it's believed that there is an asteroid belt, actually 2 asteroid belts in the Epsilon Eridani system, as well as some planets. Now keep in mind, Epsilon Eridani features a much stronger magnetic field than the Sun. Its rotation is only 11.2 days, nearly 3 times as fast as the Sun's rotation. And this star, located in the Andromeda constellation, is located 10.5 light years from Earth. Apparent magnitude of 3.73. It is the 3rd closest individual star system visible to the unaided eye. You want to read more about Epsilon Eridani? There is some argument about whether or not it has planets, because the stellar wobble could be associated with its magnetic fields, or it could be associated with planets. Anyway, read all about it if you like. We've left links below the video. And here's an article also from May 3rd, 2017 on Sci News. And anyway, the star is pretty similar to our local yellow dwarf. And let's move on, as we don't want the video to be too long. I wanted to just scroll down the headlines here on Universe Today. So check this out. New satellites will tell us exactly how quickly the oceans are rising. Okay. Well, the oceans have been rising for the last 20,000 years. However, they're much lower than they were during the Minoan warm period, and we're not going to get into that, but let's just look at the headlines here. So, okay, first we've got, all right, from yesterday, new satellites will tell us exactly how quickly the oceans are rising. All right. And here's one about Alpha Centauri, exoplanets. And there's a reason we don't cover exoplanets on the channel, folks. Here's an Antarctican ice drone. Here's the story about the most powerful gamma ray burst ever detected, which we covered like 3 days ago. A brand new island in the Pacific has survived 5 years. Well, what's up with that? If ocean levels are rising, how come this thing's not underwater? Please leave a comment if you have a theory. I just wanted to cite how Universe Today refuted its own headline in another headline on the same homepage. Let's talk about more climate myths. John Stossel's been exposing them, as Greta is very angry because somebody told her to be very angry. Somehow I doubt she's taken a high school physics class, and if she has, she was probably taught a bunch of nonsense. Apparently the world's gonna end in 12 years due to climate change. And by the way, carbon dioxide has nothing to do with the Earth's climate, except that carbon dioxide levels rise 800 years after the temperature goes up. Please consult Tony Heller's page. By the way, Tony had a great video yesterday, and I really got to reach out to him and see if I can get him on for a 5 to 15 minute interview. One of our favorite YouTube channels. And thanks John Stossel for stepping into the fray. Here's a lightning map. We're getting back to data. And it's pretty calm as far as lightning goes, although there's quite a bit in the Mediterranean. And perhaps a stray lightning bolt in the middle of the North Atlantic. Check it out. Lightningmaps.org. It could save your whatever. It could save your lightning rod from getting vaporized. Here's a US Doppler radar. You see some wintry mix over central Illinois, as well as some significant thunderstorms over the south. Here's the water vapor map for all you folks who think the Doppler radar is lying to you. Man, oh man, look at that convergence zone. There's an atmospheric compression happening over northwestern New Mexico. And we are so going to zoom in on that area as I see massive evidence of Hall currents. Just an epic example of electricity in the atmosphere there. You can see all kinds of perpendicular lines forming. And, when you see lines forming perpendicular to the flow of water, that's an obvious sign of electrical current. Man, oh man. If you think those lines are chemtrails or contrails, you seriously got to take a physics class, folks. The resolution on this image is 2 kilometers. Enough said about that. By the way, that area over central Utah, as well as the Oklahoma Panhandle, those are, shall we say, high proton regions. By the way, if you're wondering what a Hall current is, Hall currents are the things that are responsible for the Earth's weather. So if you just simply look up Birkeland currents, you'll see this Wikipedia page, which shows this great diagram, which you've probably seen all over the internet, where we've got field-aligned currents from the solar wind. We've got Peterson currents as they equalize between each other. We've got a Birkeland current flowing in both directions, and part of the spill out as the Earth's atmosphere acts as a semiconductor. As its capacitance changes, these things are called Hall currents. And these are what cause the jet stream to do what the jet stream does, or not do what the jet stream does, as is the case throughout the year 2019. And welcome to the Neo-Renaissance, as astrophysics and cosmology get rewritten. We did not leave links to this article about Birkeland currents, just because you can look it up yourself. It's Birkeland. And here's a shortwave satellite animation here. I would simply note that there's a lot of low-lying clouds there, and it's some pretty odd meteorological formations happening. If you're located in these regions around the Four Corners area, please take some photographs of the cloud phenomenon that you'll be seeing throughout the day today. They should only get more interesting as the sun rises, and I'm not going to tell you why in this video. I will tell you that low clouds are associated with cosmic rays. And before I move on, I would note that the Atlantic Ocean is full of low clouds. You don't believe me? Check out windy.com. Windy.com will actually separate the cloud altitudes. You can look at just low clouds or just high clouds. Low clouds galore, folks. And those parallel lines are not caused by ship tracks or contrails or chemtrails. Here are the western jet streams. And it's starting to look a little more consolidated, although we still have a lot of bumps. And this area right off the coast of California here is going a little bit backwards. Anyway, let's look at the eastern jets and move on, as we want this video to be live. And folks, look for our live streams coming back soon. We're going to be changing the operation around. We keep talking about how it's going to be different for patrons and so on. And it's all too true, folks. Eventually, you're only going to see clips when you view YouTube and never the full-length videos. We've got some crazy weather has hit Los Angeles and Las Vegas with severe hailstorms. There's some of that footage, courtesy USA Today. And there's the floods in Phoenix. Check it out. Navigating a boat would be better off driving here than a car. Links to this article. Actually, it's just more like some video from USA Today. It was very hard to find, actually. I don't know why. It seems like it got buried. But we found it anyway, and we linked it for our delightful viewers. And it's time to understand the distinction between your oot and a hole in the ground. Let's define some terms. Mechanistic. Mechanically determined, of or relating to a mechanism, or the doctrine of mechanism, mechanical. One of the problems with mankind is since about World War I, mankind has devolved into a
mechanistic
species where we're more concerned about, well, the mechanism behind it. In other words, without a mechanism, it's like it's a problem. And this mechanistic attitude that mankind has adopted has not only caused resources to be massively misallocated, it has also caused a transactional lifestyle where people are trading their actual lives for money. Is it worth it? A transaction is an exchange or transfer of goods or services. Anyway, we need to get rid of the mechanistic lifestyle and transactional behavior of mankind and start looking at the bigger picture, folks. Now, there are a lot of things I want the government to do and a lot of things I don't want the government to do. One of the things I want the government to do, which is why I voted on the referendum in Pennsylvania to get rid of property taxes. Now, some states will call them school taxes. Pennsylvania is one of those states. These are simply property taxes. Now, in where I'm located, there is a multi-billion-dollar building operated by one of the largest organizations in the entire state, probably the biggest organization in the whole state. And yet, my landlord, I shouldn't call him a landlord, my host gets to pay about $5,000 a year in school taxes. Now, as if that's not bad enough, you're essentially renting your own property here. And what's the problem? Well, the problem is Pennsylvania residents voted to eliminate the property tax. So why isn't it gone? We'd like to see it gone by next year before it needs to be paid again. Or perhaps, I don't know, by New Year's Eve. People voted 70% to get rid of this tax. 56 of 67 Pennsylvania's counties voted yes. That's 84% of the counties voted to get rid of this tax, where you get to pay off your mortgage and then still continue to pay rent, essentially, for your local municipality. An utterly, utterly unconstitutional cash grab. Yet another thing that I would prefer governments not do. Now, there are things I want the government to do, such as provide air superiority so Russia and China can't drop a bomb on me. I also want the government to build roads and provide police, ambulance, and fire services, things like that. What I don't want the government to do is come over and measure the grass and tell me to cut down thousands of dollars, tell me to do thousands of dollars worth of property modifications because the code enforcement officer thinks that they're some kind of harm. I don't know. It's all nonsense. Screw the government. Now let's talk about self-taught humans. Now I'm a self-taught human, and I learned to read at age 3. Why? Because I didn't want to go to school. I started hating the government when I was 5 years old. I asked my mom, why are we going to this school? She said, to sign you up for kindergarten. And I said, what? I'm self-taught. I can learn everything. All that information is available in libraries. Why do I gotta go to school and learn how to read when I already know how to? And she said, oh, I'll go to jail if you don't go to school. And at that point, at age 5, I said, screw the government. Excuse me. Anyway, a lot of people on the internet will tell you that they're self-taught. Not all of us are going to be prodigies. However, some of us are going to be prodigies. Some of us are legitimately self-taught. And I'll just leave it there as I go to another article here. About Google Junkware. Oh, yeah. Now, here's yet another reason not to use Gmail's Junkware. Guess what? They're going to be migrating some AI-powered junk into Google Drive and Google Docs. That's right. Gmail reads the body of your emails, folks. If it didn't, it wouldn't be able to do this. You see this nonsense when you're typing an email and all of a sudden it tries to finish your sentence for you? That's Junkware. That's Google. When your search results suck and you want to say the F word, that's Google. When they tamper with elections and they're a stinking section, that's a Google. They are full of lies. They tried to get Hillary Clinton elected president in 2016. They're still electioneering. They're trying to take over the universe. That's a Google. When you see a company that you'd like to destroy, that's a Google. Links to the article below the video. From Extreme Tech, a major critic of Google's Junkware, which is just all over the world, and it's like a foul, disgusting mold growing all over the planet, practically inescapable. And we recommend that you de-Googleify. Now, of course, YouTube is owned by Google. Thanks to all of our viewers who've pressed like and subscribe. We apologize for the constant bickering about Google, although I would prefer to only focus on other things. It has become a wrench in everybody's gear. So please press like and subscribe here on YouTube, or if you're watching on BitChute or wherever you're watching. We're also on Minds and on Gab and all over the web. We're even on Twitter, believe it or not, although I don't tweet. Maybe one of these centuries we'll reach 1,500 subscribers. You're welcome, Google. Please support the channel via Patreon, the real source of income, as Google pays us precisely $0 for these videos. Yes, I know, they show you ads. The channel's monetized. That's for Google's benefit, not ours. We can show you the balance sheet, we just choose not to, because we don't tell lies here, we don't exaggerate. We just tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. Patreon.com/smAsho, the real source of funding for this channel. And thanks Smash Team for tuning in. Stay tuned for a bonus feature. It's not going to be a tour of the smashomash.org or the smashomash.com, as those are under construction. But stay tuned for those to be upgraded big time. That means you, SmAsho staff. You're in the hot seat. And we are looking at the 94 angstroms view here. This is your bonus feature. The North Pole coronal hole is looking gigantor. Check it out. There's a little bit of plasma up here, but then there's a coronal hole right there. It's kind of like very huge. Possibly an indication that the North Pole is weakening. Let's not get too in-depth into it. Here's the southern portion. I apologize for the flashing. It's taken forever for the SDO to load lately, ever since the Mercury transit, where people realized that they could stare at the sun. Anyway, there's the southern region. This area here is the region to watch for. It could turn into a sunspot. It's a cycle 24, according to the polarity. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for staring at the sun. When you're doing so, please don't drink it if you drink. Stare at the sun anyway, just don't drive. And since it'll never be now again, may that solar wind be at your back and that atherosclerosis absent from your veins.